So the motto of our community, which was set in the middle of the 1900s, is love for all, hatred for none. And it could never be more applicable than in today's society, where we really need a lot more of that. I'm going to cover three topics. First, I want to do a big picture overview of Islam in general. That'll go pretty quick. Then I'll give you an overview of our Ahmadia Muslim community, and then we're running a campaign called True Islam to try to help address the roots of extremism that have brought a lot of messages to the masses that are somewhat confused with ideas that we believe are not founded within Islam. So first of all, Islam has 5 pillars. Like many faiths, we can summarize our beliefs in expressing what the pillars or the foundation of our faith teaches us. And the first is that we should believe in one God. So we say there is no God but God, or Allah. And Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. We don't say he's the exclusive or only prophet. We say that he is a prophet of God. The second is that we are to pray 5 times a day, as marked by sunrise and afternoon and sunset and evening. So we pray 5 times a day. Third is that during the month of Ramadan, which is going to begin in just a few days, we fast for 30 days from sunrise to sunset, abstaining from water and food. The fourth is that we give alms. So it's prescribed that we should give a percentage of our income, like many faiths, to the needy and to charity. And the fifth is that we should perform the pilgrimage once in a lifetime for those with means to Mecca. And so those are the 5 pillars. The prayer that's recited most often, we call it Surah Al-Fatiha. It's the first chapter in the Holy Quran. It's simply 7 verses. And in that, it basically, it's interesting if you look at a lot of Hollywood stereotypes of Muslims praying, and there's a lot of mystery there. I thought I would kind of demystify that by just expressing what our most commonly recited prayer is. We say this 1,000,000 times in our lifetime. In a roughly 70-year lifetime, you'll say this 1,000,000 times if you follow the 5 prayers a day. It just says, in the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, all praise belongs to God, Lord of all the worlds. The gracious, the merciful is repeated. Master of the day of judgment, thee alone do we worship, and thee alone do we seek help, we implore for help. Guide us on the right path, and don't allow us to go on a path of those that have not gone on the right path, meaning don't let us go astray. That's the simple prayer that Muslims recite over and over again every day and throughout their lives. The second thing is that we believe that the prophets of God are in one continuum. We believe that, and these are prophets that are specifically mentioned in the Quran, but there are many, many prophets beyond that, and we believe in all of the books. The Word of God, we believe, is a continuum of a message that's been revealed over time. And in this line of prophets, we believe that Muhammad brought the message through the Quran, which is, we believe, a revealed Word of God. And so it says here in the verse that we believe in God and what has been revealed to us and what was revealed before us. And so we believe in all of the prophets of God. So the idea that we exclusively think that we are God's chosen and that everyone else is to find themselves as losers in the hereafter, we do not believe that. We believe that every believing people of their own book have the same opportunity as Muslims do, and it is not in our faith in any way that we exclusively believe that we have any kind of right to the hereafter, to heaven, versus other faiths. We believe that the law that Muhammad brought was a more complete law, meaning that it was in the continuum, the most recent Word of God. We don't believe, if we were alive at the time of Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, we would have believed in what he brought, and then we would have believed what Moses brought, and any other prophet before that. So that's the way that Islam is organized. The next thing is just an overview of where are Muslims in the world. The common idea is that the Middle East is where Islam is really based. Actually, Indonesia, Asia Pacific, is the largest population of Muslims. And then the Middle East, and then South Africa, and then Europe, and then North America and Latin America. And then Islam has 73 sects. Like any religion, as you migrate through time, you'll find that people, not the religion, and this is constantly what is confusing the matter with Islam is that people bring an ideological difference or an interpretation difference, and eventually those people, maybe tribes in the original days, would just say, okay, you believe what you're going to believe, we're going to believe what we're going to believe, and we're now different sects. So in the context of Islam, there were 4 caliphs after the Prophet Muhammad that were elected as the successors for Islam to have a continuum of leadership. But after that, many sects came as a result of not agreeing with who should be elected the next caliph and who had the right and who didn't have the right, and those differences created sects, and that's why Islam has many sects. The Ahmadis, or the Ahmadiyya, so Ahmadiyya is the name of our faith, and Ahmadi is a person that follows Ahmadiyya, so Ahmadi refers to the individual. We're about 1% of the Muslim population, not a large percentage, but you might have heard of others that are on here, like Sunnis are 85%. And if you look at the Wahhabi, they're 0.5%. So there are many different sects, and the percentages are probably not as meaningful as maybe what they stand for.
What about the Sufis?
Go ahead. Actually, the main 2 branches of Islam are the Sunni and Shia, and underneath them are the different sects. So basically 2 schools of thought, and then under them are all different sects. So the Ahmadiyya Muslim community falls into the Sunni sect, and that basically means that the Sunnis believe more in the practice of the Holy Prophet as well as the Holy Quran, versus as well as who should have succeeded the Holy Prophet at a certain time, versus the Shias who had wanted his cousin to succeed. So that's where the split actually happened. So the 2 main branches are the Sunni and Shia, and then all other smaller sects fall underneath the 2 main branches.
And our definition and Islam's definition of who is a Muslim, if the Sufis believe in Muhammad as the messenger of God and God is one, meaning they say the kalma, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, God is one and Muhammad is his messenger. That, the Prophet was asked, how do we know a Muslim? And he said, if they say that God is one and Muhammad is his messenger, then as far as I'm concerned, that's a Muslim. And the problem with the world at large is that many groups denounce other groups as you're not Islam, you're not a Muslim, or you're not this. Really, the Prophet didn't teach that. The Prophet allowed you to self-identify, which is what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights allows you to do, is to self-identify. So that's a very important question and a topic in Islam that's kind of led to a lot of confusion today. The second topic is the overview of our community. So first thing, in our community, we believe that another prophet came after Muhammad. And this disturbs Muslims because Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet, because in the Quran it says that Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. We have sayings of the prophet as well as predictions or prophecies from many prophets that there will be a prophet in the later days called the Messiah, the promised Messiah. And many religions have statements and claims around the belief that a Messiah will come. Our community believes that that person came in the form of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, his last name being Ahmad, and that he is the promised Messiah that was foretold by many religions. And his role in the worldwide community was to denounce violence in the name of religion and to unite religion. So that's our belief. And so that's the only difference between what we believe and what, let's say, a Sunni Muslim or a main branch would believe, is that we accepted his message, and his message came in 1889 in Punjab, India, or the small town of Qadian. And otherwise, the 5 pillars, the prayers, the exact teachings of Islam and the Quran as a whole, and every prayer are identical. The only difference being that we believe that he fulfilled the prophecy that was given at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So this is a picture of him, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. He was born in 1835 and passed away in 1908. He was the founder of our community, and his mission was to end religious wars, condemn bloodshed, reinstitute morality, justice, and peace. He penned over 80 books, and one particularly important book that's relevant to today's society is that in 1900 he talked about the tradition of Muslims calling for a violent struggle. Jihad means a struggle or to strive. It does not mean war. In the Quran, many places the word jihad is used. The Arabic root means to strive or struggle. He condemned the idea that this was a holy war against non-Muslims or people that prescribed other faiths, and he also provided many proofs and backing to that were foundational to when the Prophet Muhammad was alive and what he said and what he did. Our community right now has tens of millions worldwide. Our center is in London. We're in Pakistan, but Muslim communities that did not agree that Ahmad was to be named as the Messiah by our community denounced our community and rejected us as Muslims, and so then the government of Pakistan denounced us to be non-Muslims. And so we were persecuted formally by the government and informally by the people, and so eventually we moved out of, our leadership moved out of Pakistan and settled in London. This is the fifth Khalifa. His name is Mirza Masroor Ahmad. Again, he's in London. That's the Fazl Mosque is the first mosque in Western Europe, 1924, and the Bait al-Futuh is the current mosque that we built there. It's the largest mosque in Western Europe. And we have a 24/7 international satellite network, and our U.S. center is in Silver Spring, Maryland. We have 70 plus chapters around the United States, the main one being in Maryland, but then many communities like Detroit and Los Angeles and Silicon Valley represent the core of our community here. Our growth, just to kind of help you see the geographic growth as well as the population growth, I plotted two things. One is how many mosques did we have in 1889, 1890. You can see that sort of in 1985, 84 timeframe, our community exponentially grew. Well, actually, our Khalifa, the fourth Khalifa, was forced out of Pakistan in 1984. They actually made it a law that if I, as an Ahmadi, said Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon you, to any other person, which is a standard greeting in a Muslim country, that I was posing as a Muslim and it was punishable by imprisonment. And then eventually that could lead to blasphemy, which could be punishable by death. So all of those things caused our community to have to leave Pakistan. Well, if you look at the number of mosques that are built globally, it kind of follows that we migrated to Europe and then to many countries around the world. So our number of countries is now over 200 countries globally, and we're a reformist movement, so we have missions established in all of these countries. In the United States, there was a missionary that came from he was one of the companions of the Promised Messiah. He came in 1920, actually first to Philadelphia, then to Detroit, and then to Chicago. So there are three early historic centers in our community in those three cities. And his name was Mufti Muhammad Sadiq. One of our famous personalities is Sir Chaudhry Zulfikar Khan, and he was the first foreign minister that helped form Pakistan. So originally when Pakistan was formed, it was a secular country. It was not a republic, it was not an Islamic republic. It was a secular, and it practiced freedom of religion. So he helped draft the Constitution, so he was the Thomas Jefferson of Pakistan, so to speak. And also the Secretary General of the United Nations, that he had many other posts in his career. That's a picture with him with President Kennedy. And then our first women's auxiliary president meeting Gerald Ford. So we've been kind of very active in kind of being a part of the country that we're in. So loyalty to country is one of our other foundations. We have a journal called the Muslim Sunrise that was started in 1920. It's the oldest periodical of Islam in America. Today it still runs. And we also have a document called the Review of Religions. And so I think those are the main topics. And then our spiritual leader speaks against terrorism and extremism continuously. We feel that one aspect of our community's history is that we were the original community to be persecuted by the same people that are persecuting everyone right now. And that extremist organization that said it's our belief system, the only one that's right, led to them condemning us for believing in Ahmad as the promised Messiah. So we felt that very strong extremist connection our entire existence. And so we have always practiced and also voluntarily helped governments understand extremism in Islam and what the root of it is, and then what to do to try to correct the inconsistencies that have been brought by extremists in the modern era. He continuously writes letters to Pope Francis and to leaders and invites people to peace conferences, and I'll show you some examples of his work in a few minutes. We have a humanitarian organization, much like the Salvation Army was born out of a faith-based organization, so was Humanity First. Humanity First as an organization does disaster relief, so hurricanes, earthquakes, water crises. There's a lot of medical centers that have been developed. So we kind of, when we put our charity to work, we give it to a nonprofit that we created, but it's also a secular-based community, and it's international in scope. It helps people across the world on many topics, and one of the more recent ones we've been running is a hunger campaign in America, as well as a water campaign in Guatemala. And then we launched a campaign. We try to think of trying to, if you look at the absence, people say, where are the moderate Muslims? It's the absence of a discourse when something's going wrong is not really very uncommon, because if someone takes a very extreme view, you can sit back and say, well, that's ridiculous, that's not what we believe, and everyone can do that. But you actually have to do something to finally get the message out that that is not the prevailing view. So our community takes that pretty seriously. I'm the national vice president of our public affairs outreach organization for the USA, and our job is to create a proper articulation of what Islam represents. And so this is a Muslims for Life campaign. We kicked this off in 2011 to commemorate the victims of 9/11, where we raised on the order of 30,000 pints of blood total have been raised, and 100,000 lives we believe have been saved. We do this with the American Red Cross, and we do this across the country. We also, building on Muslims for Life, created a campaign called Muslims for Loyalty, because we see that Islam has this image of not being loyal to your country as being something that's sanctioned, and it's not. And then Muslims for Peace. So we kind of are active about countering extremism. We started a youth campaign, which were college students around the country and in Canada as well, called a movement called Stop the Crisis. And that's been kind of aiming at helping to get a message out to the youth in campuses to not follow this radical idea that ISIS is trying to recruit people from the West. And then our spokesperson, our Khalifa, also spoke heavily about condemning ISIS in our 11th annual Peace Symposium. And it's also not just enough to be putting your message out. We take a look at what other leaders are saying. For example, Saudi Arabia Grand Mufti called for churches in the region to be destroyed over some matter that was going on, and so we will write a press release and publish it and say we condemn that. That's not Islam. Here's what Islam teaches. So we really look for the opportunity to correct those conceptions so that there's not this going unanswered, and the same with Syria. We have a lot of symposiums that go along the lines of global events. British Parliament, in the military headquarters in Germany. We spoke at the European Parliament in Brussels. Our Khalifa met with the President of the EU Parliament. Also traveled to the United States and met with members of Congress. Nancy Pelosi and others hosted him. There were 27 members of Congress, and his message was had the privilege of helping to organize and be there for that event. And he gave this really clear message that said, if you have a problem in society in which there is unrest or the absence of peace, look for an injustice. If there's not justice, there won't be peace. They're absolutely tied to one another, and if you find a lot of unrest, then look for the injustice and work on correcting that. And that was kind of around the idea of what is the job of the United Nations, and what is the job of the original League of Nations, and how have the United Nations worked to make sure that justice prevails as opposed to agendas, political agendas. And I think that message was pretty well received. Also speaking at other events, came to California and also in London. We've launched a caucus to help with minority rights because we're a persecuted community. We understand that, so we launched a caucus with members of Congress. Our local, Jackie Spears, actually the head of the Ahmadia Muslim Caucus, and then we have Ted Poe serving as another representative that's helping to co-chair that. And our agenda with the caucus is broad. It's our own community because we're persecuted, but it's also any religious community or any community that's persecuted. We tend to take up those matters very, very importantly and seriously. So we took it upon ourselves when President Obama called for Muslims to decisively and unequivocally reject the hateful ideology of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We created a campaign actually here in Silicon Valley. We launched this campaign right around the time of the San Bernardino event. And before we launched the campaign, we ran a census. We actually paid to have a study carried out by YouGov. And what we wanted to know is, among American Muslims, a population that's that's raised in a culture that believes in the secular society and the democratic way, what do American Muslims think about certain matters, not just making it a random question to Muslims that may not hold values that Americans hold. And it was kind of surprising. First of all, in Islam, blasphemy should not be punished. Well, only 48% agreed with that. So that means 52% of Muslims in America thought blasphemy should be punished. That's not taught by Islam. Islam requires loyalty to your homeland. 42% or 52% agreed, but that means half didn't agree. So they didn't think that Islam and loyalty to your homeland were connected. Islam supports separation of mosque and state. Only 32% agreed. We believe that that's a fundamental. The Prophet of Islam said he was almost like the mayor of Medina. When he went to migrate to Medina, it was a Jewish tribe that said that they wanted him to be the leader of Medina. And there was very complex society of different religions there. And for us to believe that you don't have loyalty to your homeland would not be in connection to what the Prophet taught us. Islam condemns every form of terrorism. Well, that's great. At least 82% agreed. But 18% didn't. And that's kind of odd. So we felt that this was a very clear message that not just Americans were having trouble understanding Islam, but we believe that even Muslim Americans were having trouble understanding Islam. So what we did, we launched a campaign. We called it True Islam and the Extremist. And it has 11 points. You can endorse the points one by one. We have 4,500 people that have endorsed this campaign, and all we did is we said, we're going to only use 3 sources. It's either in the Quran, it's in what the Prophet has said or done, and these 2 sources are going to give us just 11 clear points. And so the first one is that Islam wholly rejects all form of terrorism, and we back that up with the Quran saying, do not go about committing inequity in the earth and causing disorder. That's a Quranic injunction on Muslims. Seek not to create disorder in the earth. And the Prophet saying, truly God instructs me to be humble and lowly and not proud, and no one should oppress others. So those ideas are directly from Islam. No one can doubt that because they're written in the books that every Muslim should be reading and believing in. Islam believes in a non-violent jihad and of the self and of the pen. So we've stated this as a principle. Then it says, whosoever killed a person, it shall be as if they killed all mankind. And it said, the Quran says, permission to fight is given to those against whom war is made. So if you're defending yourself, okay, that's permission. But it's not given to you unilaterally to create an aggressive war. And do not revert to disbelief after me by striking the necks of one another, meaning killing one another. So that's something that the Prophet said. And many people say, okay, well, this is all great, but somewhere in the Quran, it must tell you to do these bad things, because look how many Muslims are believing that that's the way to go. Well, the Quran says, and kill them wherever you meet them and drive them out from where they are and where they've driven you out. For persecution is worse than killing. It's giving Muslims permission to kill another party, but there's context before that, which is fight in the cause of Allah against those who fight against you. That's the verse before. And the verse after is, but if they desist, then God is most forgiving. Meaning, it's better to not fight. So this was in the time, the Prophet of Islam, when he brought his message to Mecca. Mecca was a trade town where they believed in idols. He brought a message of one God. Many of the people that traded said, we need to get rid of this guy. Because he's talking about one God, we have all these idols in the Kaaba, and we don't like that message, it's bad for business. They wanted him out and they persecuted him. 10 years of persecution, and he never fought back. He went to Medina as a way to give him permission by God to go to Medina. Only after the Meccans came to Medina to fight the Muslims did they fight back. And in this context, it gave them permission, but it never gave them permission to create or advance an aggressive war. And that's one verse that many extremists use as a way to rile up people and say, the Quran tells you, these are the people, go fight them. But it's not in context. The third point is Islam believes in the equality, education, and empowerment of women. We believe that's true. And the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, he says, it is the duty of every Muslim man and every Muslim woman to acquire knowledge. The entire idea of women not being allowed to be educated is completely against the Prophet's words. And so again, all we've done, as simply as can be said, Ahmad's message to Ahmadis all around the world was, just look in the Quran and look at what the Prophet said and follow. Don't need to change a single sentence or a single period. Just follow Islam. And so his job was to bring us back to the root of Islam and to the teachings of Islam. Fourth point, Islam advocates freedom of conscience in religion and speech. There is no compulsion in religion. For you, your religion, for me, mine. And if God had enforced his will, he would not have set up gods with him, and we would not have made Muhammad the keeper over them, and thou art not their guardian, meaning to everyone, they can do their own. You can give a message, but it's up to others to decide what they believe. And Muhammad gave a very important document to the monks of St. Catherine's Monastery. And in that, it was called the Charter of Privileges. It's a historic document, and it still hangs in that monastery today. And it says, this is the covenant to those who adopt Christianity. Verily, I and my followers defend them. I hold out against anything that displeases them. No compulsion is to be on them. No one is to destroy a house of their religion. No one of the Muslims is to disobey this covenant until the last day. There's no confusion in that. That's such a powerful, all-encompassing, you can't get out of that statement. So if you ever burn a church down, and then you read this, you should be like, well, as a Muslim, I just committed a complete violation of what my prophet told me that I must do until the last day. He didn't even give a time limit. He said until the last day. The fifth of the 11 points is advocating separation of mosque and state. Prophet Muhammad said, whoso obeys the ruler obeys me, and whoso disobeys the ruler disobeys me. That's also very powerful. It's a loyalty statement. If you get to enjoy the freedoms that your country offers you, you don't get the opportunity then to stand away from your government and say, I don't buy into what you're telling me, and I'm not loyal to you. I'm going to do my own thing. One of the problems in the extremist Muslim world today is they believe that there's only one law, Islamic law, and there's no border. That was actually taught by many religious scholars in Islam, that the only border you need to believe in is the Islamic Sharia law, and don't worry about any government that's in your way. And that's the entire basis for this argument of dissolving these borders and trying to create the Islamic State, which is bound only by itself as opposed to being loyal to its country that it's part of. Point 6, Islam believes in loyalty to your country of residence. Love of one's country is part of one's faith, was a saying of Prophet Muhammad, and you should listen to and obey your rulers even if you despise them, which may be an important lesson to me if the election goes the wrong way. Point 7, Islam encompasses the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And Prophet Muhammad said, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, which was a big problem when he was in Arabia. Arabs felt that they had a superiority over all other people. And a white has no superiority over a black. So this was the equality statement. This was the beginnings, if you will, of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that's why Islam spread. It didn't spread because people thought they were in fear and the sword was going to get them. It really spread because it gave the common people in Arabia, all walks of life, equality. And it gave a slave equality to their ruler, and it gave a woman equality. It gave a woman a right to have education, a right. In the Quran, a woman was given the right to inheritance, given many, many rights that they didn't have in the time And that's why Islam spread, not by the conventional wisdom that it was by force. Point 9, Islam recognizes no religion can monopolize salvation. That's a point that I made in the very beginning. That's a very, very important point because some people believe that Muslims are advocating a principle that Islam has a higher ground than other faiths. And the Quran says, as to those who believe, verily God will judge between them on the day of resurrection. Surely God watches over all things, and surely those who believe, and the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, whichever party they're from, these truly believe in God of the last day and does good deeds, shall have their reward with their Lord. In other words, it's believers. There's a word called kafir, and that means non-believer. What a lot of people think is that means non-Muslim. Not the case. What non-believer means is that there's one God, or we believe in that higher spiritual entity that you started the prayer with today, that those who believe in God are believers, and those who do not believe in God are non-believers. That's the category. But there may be Jewish and Christian and Ahmadi and other Muslims. All of these sects and all of these faiths can comprise themselves of believers. 10, Islam believes in the need for unified Muslim leadership. And this was also in the idea that Islam started out having successors after Prophet Muhammad, and that broke down. We have now elected the 5th successor to the promised Messiah, and we believe that he is a way in which you could understand unified leadership in the Muslim world. But many Muslims don't agree with that, but that's our belief. And then finally, we wholly reject the concept of a bloody Messiah, that the promised Messiah will come in the later days to start religious wars. There's some that believe in Islam that he'll metaphorically come down from the heavens, wielding swords and doing bad things to people and so forth, and we reject that. So our idea is that you define Islam, we call it true Islam, and then you show what ISIS, a group like ISIS, believes. They don't subscribe to any of these points. They actually believe the inverse of all 11 of these points. That's why we selected these 11 points to provide a highlighting difference between these organizations. And then finally, President Obama, and I'm not subscribing to any political agenda here, but I'm just saying that we believe in the leader of our country, whoever's elected, and he is saying to us that we must discredit ISIS's ideology, and the Ahmadi Muslim community believes that completely, that that's a very important obligation of ours. So we have been pushing this campaign now for about 5 months, and again we have about 4,500 people that have signed that, of all walks of life, not just Muslim, and not just from our community. And that's our presentation. And I went 6 minutes over, I'm sorry.
Well, you have a lot of face around here, so that's about 13 seconds each face. And I think our face can survive that.
Okay.
We appreciate that, and we hope that you will take some questions from us.
Sure.
And you've certainly given us a lot to think about. And, I'll start it off, which is, why don't we hear more of this? I have some thoughts about that. We talked about that over the evening. But why is not this more common known in our communities? I mean, I can tell you, even in our temple, 4 or 5 years ago, it's not common knowledge, but there was a little bit of a fear. Do we join with Muslims?
Yeah.
Do we feel comfortable? Because we have older individuals that don't understand, and they understand some old ways and whatever, and they're reading some of the publicity that comes through. And I know that that's changing in our faiths. But I also know, for me personally, what I see is we have such a long way to go. And so this is a journey of understanding with each other, and being comfortable with each other. So I'm looking personally for a way that we can take one more step down that journey together, to make it, to make it understandable, more easy for our faiths and our congregations. And I know that brings us up to the iftar event that we have on the 26th, which has been wonderful in the past, and we'll talk about that a little later today. And so those are the questions that swirl around my mind, things I learned today and I knew. Each of our faiths have been persecuted throughout history.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've learned your part of your persecution, part of your migration,